This is a story of family, of advocacy, and heartbreak. But this story does not need to end in tragedy like many other stories before it. This is thoracic aortic disease, also known as TAD. The cardiovascular system is made up of the heart and blood vessels which pumps blood throughout the body, providing nutrients, oxygen, and other needed nutrients. The aorta is the largest artery of the heart and the body. The aorta originates in the left ventricle of the heart and extends down into the abdominal cavity. The aorta's anatomy is broken down into segments: the aortic root, ascending aorta, aortic arch, and descending aorta, which includes the thoracic aorta and abdominal aorta. The aorta is then divided into two iliac arteries. Thoracic aorta dissection is the 15th leading cause of death in the United States.
It strikes suddenly, and unfortunately, when it strikes, it's often deadly.
Thoracic aortic dissection is caused by a tear in the wall of the aorta, creating a second passageway for blood flow. The pressure of the blood flow separates the layers of the aorta, resulting in dissection. Dissection is often the result of dilation of the aorta or an aortic aneurysm. Thoracic aortic dissection is considered a medical emergency requiring immediate medical attention. The symptoms of an aortic dissection can often mimic those of a heart attack. Since heart attacks are far more common than aortic disease, those who are suffering from thoracic aortic dissection will often be misdiagnosed or underdiagnosed. Mortality rate increases 1% for every hour that a person goes untreated or diagnosed. 33% of patients die within the first 24 hours, 50% die within 48 hours, and the 2-week mortality rate advances towards 75% of those who have an undiagnosed case.
The thing that was hardest in our particular case was that our daughter was an adolescent when we determined that she had Marfan syndrome, and it was particularly difficult finding out at that time in her life because of the aortal involvement in Marfan syndrome and the possibility of a spontaneous aortal eruption, a spontaneous rupture of the aorta, even though her dilation of the aorta was minor, that still was a concern. And for the first year after her diagnosis and being treated, during that time being treated by the cardiologist, we restricted her activities while we were seeing just how rapidly her aorta was changing.
A misdiagnosis was the reason for the death of Jonathan Larson. Larson was a composer and a playwright known for his most popular creation, Rent. Rent was the 9th longest-running Broadway musical, opened in 1996, finally closing in 2008. Sadly, Larson never saw Rent go to Broadway. He died 3 months before it moved to the New York Theater Workshop to the Nederlander Theater. In the last week of January 1996, Jonathan Larson practically collapsed from severe chest pain, prompting him to visit the emergency room twice to prominent New York City hospitals. At both locations, he was misdiagnosed. The first time, the pain was believed to be due to food poisoning, and at the second hospital, it was diagnosed as a virus. He lacked many of the indicators for either condition, but was given the appropriate medication for those diagnoses and then sent home. After returning to his apartment from the final dress rehearsal of Rent, Jonathan Larson was found on the kitchen floor by his roommate in the early morning. He had died of an aortic dissection. It was later discovered that Larson may have had the genetic connective tissue disorder Marfan syndrome. Not all dissections are the result of a connective tissue disorder like Marfan syndrome, Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, Turner syndrome, and vascular Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. A genetic predisposition to aortic aneurysm and dissection that are not explained by the previous conditions are categorized as familial aortic aneurysm. Sadly, those who are young and living healthy lifestyles do not see the symptoms coming until it is too late. This is the tragedy of Tyler Kahle. Tyler Kahle was a 19-year-old freshman. His life was just starting. He had hopes of pursuing a career in computer science or web design. Tyler was also a self-proclaimed adventurer and daredevil. In a heartbreaking and much preventable tragedy, he passed away in October of 2002. Having experienced some chest pains, Tyler visited an emergency room late Saturday night. Being so young, the medical physicians ruled out any cardiac-based illness, which was then reaffirmed by a normal X-ray and EKG. Believing it was allergy-related, they diagnosed Tyler with pleurisy, an inflammation of the pleura. They released Tyler and advised him to rest and visit his family physician the following week. That Monday he did just that. The same diagnosis was concluded. Deb and Terry, Tyler's parents, did not believe a respiratory diagnosis was the cause of the pain, but a probable case of thoracic aortic dissection.
So I asked, can we have a CT scan? And she said, this is not as hard. I know this is pleurisy.